This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we'll discuss psychological and emotional issues common in today's world and what to do about them. I'm Dr. Margaret, and SelfWork is a podcast dedicated to you taking just a few minutes today for your own self-work. Hi, and welcome back to SelfWork. I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford, and I'm so glad you're here. I have a guest host today who I'm about to introduce you to, but first, let's hear from one of our proud sponsors. What better time than now to decide that you're going to do something for yourself in 2023 that will only add to your sense of well-being, where you can begin every single day with an act of true self-care. Not a bubble bath, not even a therapy session, but by drinking one glass full of 75 high-quality minerals, vitamins, probiotics, adaptogens, and whole food sourced superfoods, which support everything from your gut to your immune system to your energy level. I use it every day and love this habit because if you're like me, self-care can get lost in a day full of kids, work, meals, and whatever else comes along. AG1 knows that people who listen to SelfWork are seeking to make their lives better. So Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 travel packs with your first purchase. Become your own green machine in the first hour you're up and around. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/selfwork. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/selfwork to take ownership of your health in 2023 and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Can you believe 2022 is coming to a close and 2023 is on its way? So Happy New Year to all. So today's SelfWork episode turns the tables on me as I'm being interviewed by Lewis Howes on his incredibly successful podcast, School of Greatness. I listen almost every week to his interviews when I'm out walking and learn so much from them. And since I was honored to be on the School of Greatness, and if you want to listen to that story, you can listen to last week's episode, I know what it feels like to talk with Lewis. He's one of those people that can make you feel as if you're the most interesting person he's ever talked to. You know those kinds of people? He's very approachable, and even with all of his success, responded to my asking for him to be a guest host this month with a, let me see what my team can come up with. Just to let you know, he's a New York Times best-selling author. He's a 2 times All-American athlete, keynote speaker, and entrepreneur. He's a busy guy. What you're about to hear is the second half of my interview with him as we continue to talk about what therapy's all about and other issues that are common in mental health. His last question is one he asks every guest. Of course, I'd listened to his other interviews, but I was still unprepared for this. What are the 3 things that you want others to remember about you or what you've learned in life? Wonder how you'd answer that. For me, that one was tough. But before we go on, let's hear from one more of our wonderful sponsors. "2022 is ending, which was a hard year for many, as they're trying to heal from the impact of the pandemic. And now we're welcoming 2023, with more people than ever needing help with anxiety and depression. The most common problem I hear from those seeking therapy is how hard it is to find a therapist. BetterHelp solves those problems. After you make the first contact, their standard is to offer names of therapists to you in less than 2 days. And you can talk to them in a first session to see if it's a good fit. If so, you're on your way. But if not, rather than going through an awkward call or email, you simply let BetterHelp know and they'll ask what it was you didn't like and find someone else for you. You can text, chat, or talk virtually. All of those avenues are open to you. I'm a therapist because I got good therapy. I know how much of a difference it can make. I reached out, and so can you. Here's BetterHelp's offer for SelfWork listeners. 10% off your first month of sessions if you use this link, BetterHelp.com/selfwork. There's never a better time than today to reach out and get help. BetterHelp.com/selfwork. So as we round out 2022, and again, Happy New Year to you, here's Lewis Howes interviewing Dr. Margaret Rutherford.
How do we start to overcome depression if we feel like it's building in us we don't know if we have it or not, but we feel like something's off. How do we recognize we have depression? And then how do we...
If you're a perfectionist?
Yeah, if you're a perfectionist, or if you just are depressed. How do we treat it? How do we realize we have it? How do we diagnose it? And then how do we start to treat depression if we're depressed or if we're a perfectionist who's constantly striving for more?
Well, the best answer I can think of is that depression is on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, if you have been chronically depressed for a long time, I mean, if these lights in this room slowly went down, slowly, and you didn't realize you were squinting to see, people who've been depressed a long time in a mild or moderate form don't realize until the lights are so hard, you're squinting so hard that you something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And so their awareness is usually because they finally reach a critical mass or a critical point where they go, yeah, I've got to admit something's wrong. More major depression, there's no way to hide it from yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, or I guess there is.
You can't get out of bed for weeks.
You can't get out of bed. You're not going to work. You're not finishing assignments. You don't see friends. You have thoughts of hurting yourself. You are crying all the time. You have no feeling at all. You don't want to do anything that you've done before. I mean, those are symptoms of classic depression. And other people are saying, you've got to get help. You've got to get help. You're not yourself. So that's not a good kind of depression to have, right. But it's more clear that something is terribly wrong.
What would be a few steps getting started, whether you have deep depression or mild depression, in terms of seeing some relief, treating it, and improving that depression?
Well, there are, my particular feelings about that is that usually there's something situational. You have to look at a genetic component. Mm-hmm. You have to look at, is there sort of a spiritual component? Is there a biological component? I mean, if you are drinking 10 beers a night, right. There may be, you got to look at that behavior. So you have to look at family, individual issues. You have to look at all kinds of different things. And some people do use medication to help them feel better and to help them give them some fresh mental energy. Some people really don't want to use medication. As far as what you can do, exercise is huge. Mm-hmm. So where you are on the spectrum, and the closer you get to true danger, the closer you get to losing your job, or the closer you get to having suicidal thoughts, or the closer you get to your marriage ending in a divorce, or you losing a relationship, those typically are motivators for people to say, I can't let this go on. I've got to look at this myself. A lot of times people grew up in families, like I said a few minutes ago, that they were taught that, especially in the flyover states, as I like to call it in the Midwest, that they were taught that mental illness is just it's a myth. Mm. And so people in those states, in those cultures, in those regions, really have to begin to be more conscious that it is a problem. Right. So the treatment for it is very reflective of where you are in the illness. Mm-hmm. The thing we haven't talked about is recurrent depression, which literally comes in sort of waves, and you don't have as much control over when it happens. You can be triggered, and so that work is involved, definitely looking at your triggers. Yeah. Is it weather? Is it stress? Is it not getting enough rest? Is it, a relationship you're in? What is it that is beginning to... So it's it's a journey. It's a discovery, with everybody.
It's not a quick fix, quick answer.
No, there's not. I can't get out a worksheet and say, well, now you do this. Right. Now, we also have different therapists have different techniques that they like, cognitive behavioral, emotionally focused, acceptance, commitment therapy. Mm-hmm. I mean, all these kinds of different therapies that are, have been proved to really help. But I go back to the fact that the meta-analyses show that it's really if you believe that the therapist understands you, if you believe that whatever technique they're using, that they know how to use it, and they use it consistently, and that they are helping you make those changes, then that you want to make, then I think the therapy goes much better and is much more of a place where that change can occur.
Yeah, when you trust the person who's got experience with it and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's lots of strategies to change anything in your life and to switch a belief and to heal and to forgive and let go of all these things. I've tried lots of them. Workshops, therapy. Screaming in the ocean, like whatever it is, like I'm just working out.
I have people throw glass.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the different techniques, the strategies. There's so many things you can do to try. And I think it's helpful for people to try lots of different things and don't stop trying until you start to feel a sense of inner peace.
I worked with a woman who had major recurrent depression. She had a father who died by suicide years before, and she struggled with the same kind of depression. And she fought me about, I said, you need to exercise. She tried medicine, she tried therapy, she tried going to groups, like you said, she tried all kinds of things. She changed her relationships, she did all this stuff. Once she started swimming, she walked in one day, I said, what's changed? She said, I'm swimming. And so, she found a haven in getting that kind of repetitive, and also it helped her self-esteem because she had some body image issues. So I wish, Lewis, that it was as easy to have some sort of checklist of if you do this and this and this and this, you'll feel better. It's a little more complex than that. So that's why I think you have to spend time with somebody and try to understand how they look at it and can you add to their perspective.
A holistic approach to relief. What would you say are 3 to 5 things that every human can do to arm themselves from being susceptible to mental illness, depression, anxiety attacks, a lack of self-worth, those type of things that tend to hurt us and hold us back? What are some strategies? They can be very simple and basic. It's just like work out every day or eat clean, get 8 hours of sleep. What are the things that you really recommend that you've seen work well for people when they start implementing this? Like she just had to swim and she was better. What are 3 to 5 things we could all do to improve that for ourselves?
A young man comes to mind that had actually come to therapy because of he had lost his best friend. His best friend had been killed in a car accident. And he had a lot of grieving to do. And we did that work. And then he came back in, which often happens in therapy, and was ready to be honest. And sure enough, he was drinking a lot. And as we looked at, there were some family issues. He'd been in a family where one of his siblings had almost died, and so because of that, his parents had focused much more on that sibling than they did him, and he really felt invisible. And so then his friend died, and so he was carrying around that sense of I'm not important, and I don't know how to heal that. And so basically what I had him do was talk to his family, talk to his parents about it. It was very hard for him.
Tell him how you felt.
Exactly. And so when you asked me the question, the first word that came to my mind was engagement, connection with other people.
You mean isolating yourself? And
that is not quite a good idea.
It's a way to heal?
Nah, it doesn't work.
So connection.
And in fact, therapy, when you think about it, the whole gist of therapy is for you to create a change in someone, help them create it, that they then take outside of the therapy environment and begin to implement in their own lives. And so they're open with me. Well, gosh, you can go be open with Joe Blow or
your
whatever,
mom or
your mom, And so it's engagement.
Okay.
I think that
engagement through communication, connecting with people, sharing how you feel.
Yeah.
That connection.
There's no way that exercise or having a good relationship with your body and with sleep and all that kind of thing is important. So you've got to do that. So other-oriented, self-oriented, and then the third thing I would say, people reach their spiritualness in lots of different ways. For some people, it's faith. For some people, it's just a sense of how they find their well-being, whether that's through laughter, whether that's through hobbies or activities they enjoy. Maybe their work is very purposeful for them, but a sense of purpose, a sense of knowing why you're doing what you're doing and what is important. How are you unique? And beginning to understand and value that, when you mention self-esteem, a lot of times when people struggle with self-esteem, it's because they don't know their competencies. I can't hand you a piece of paper and you put Lewis on the top, and I ask you, okay, so what are my skills? What am I good at? What are your competencies? Yeah. What do you do well? There are a lot of people that can't write anything on that piece of paper.
Yeah.
So, and it can be simple things. And so, engagement, taking care of yourself, purpose, acceptance. Self-acceptance, I think, no matter what issues you have, is a huge key. And it's different from self-esteem, because self-esteem is something that you find or you discover. Self-acceptance is more, it's not resignation. It is accepting both your strengths, the things that you have esteem about, the things that you value, but also these vulnerabilities. And when you can accept those things, whether it be sometimes I struggle with depression, sometimes I get anxious, sometimes I get jealous, sometimes I'm impatient, sometimes I get way too angry than I'm supposed to. You don't resign yourself to that and go, well, that's just me. You say, all right, I can accept that, and then I can move toward change. Again, that whole discussion we had on shame, which is if I can accept it and I don't shame myself for it, then I can move ahead and say, so what do I want to do with it?
Create a new commitment for myself.
When I moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas from Dallas, Texas, I told my therapist at the time, there is no way that I'm going to tell anybody in a small town in Arkansas that I've been divorced twice. I will get railroaded out of town. What is she doing? Why is she helping people? She can't help couples. She can't
help herself.
Can't help myself. Now, I have been married almost 30 years now. But all that said, and he just kind of smiled and looked at me, And I was obviously not in self-acceptance. And then when someone was across from me, I remember who it was. Well, obviously, I'm not going to say. And she was getting her second divorce, and she looked at me and she said, but obviously that's not something you know anything about. And I, that, just made the decision. I looked at her and I said, you're about to join a club that I've been a member of for a long time.
Wow.
And I felt this, what did I just do?
You never told any of your clients?
No.
Wow.
That's the level of shame I had, the level of, I was not in a self-accepting place. And as soon as I began to just breathe through that and think, well, she may walk out of the room.
You had your own therapy session.
I did. It was more about me than you. Would you like to sit here and I'll sit there? Which I hope she didn't realize. But I gave a huge gift to myself because it was at that point, and it was a journey, but it was at that point that journey began of, I have to accept this. I don't like it. I'm not proud of it. I have remorse about it. But I can accept it and then make damn sure that I don't make those same mistakes again in the relationships that I'm in now.
How do we accept something about our past if we're ashamed of it and we know it was wrong, or we are just frustrated we did it, or you're not proud of it, like you said? How do you come to accept it?
My answer to that would be because you have to also accept, or you can accept, that doesn't define you any more than your competencies do. The fact that I have a PhD after my name is lovely. It is a means to an end. I get to help people, and I'm given a license, and I get to sit in front of people just like you and I are talking, and I get to hear and try to help.
But that can be taken away.
But the fact that I was divorced twice, or that I struggle sometimes in my own marriage, we all do, doesn't define me any more than those three letters. And so that's sort of just sitting with that, and okay, it doesn't. Now, will it matter to other people? Yeah, it might. I can't control that.
Sure.
But what I can have control over is whether I accept it in myself. That's 4. Trying to think of a 5th. I'm probably leaving out some glaring thing that, people listening are going to go, why don't you say this?
I think 4 is good.
Yeah.
What are the things that most of us learn from childhood that typically hold us back from adulthood, that are hard for us to let go of?
We absorb sometimes through modeling. Sometimes our parents model things for us that they never tell us, but they just model it. And we absorb that as reality. That's what life is like. That's what marriage is like. That's what being a man is like. That's what being a Baptist is like. That's what being a woman is like.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the definitions, and if those are erroneous or if they are destructive, then that's what you've absorbed. And so you'll go on and live that out, again, without being very aware.
Unconscious of it.
Unconscious.
So how do we become conscious of these patterns or beliefs we've been mirroring our whole life? When we think that's the way it's supposed to be, or we think it's the truth, or we think this is the right way, how do we become conscious besides a tragic accident, a death in the family, a breakup or divorce? It seems like there has to be some big breakdown in our lives.
Sometimes there does.
A near-death experience for yourself, a car crash, for you to wake up and become conscious and evaluate everything. How do we get to that place without nearly dying?
Yeah.
Or, going through divorce?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
I remember a night that I had an old player piano. It had been a player piano, and it had been modified to be a regular piano. But it had this huge shelf with the keys, and so here was this big thing, and then these keys, but I could sit under it. And I remember after my second divorce, I was sitting in there and just bawling, thinking, what's going on with my life? And then all of a sudden I thought, all right, you're the thread. This is,
You're the common denominator.
I'm the common denominator. And I need to start looking at either how I'm choosing or what I'm looking for or how I'm acting or whatever. And I have to look at that. And it was a damn hard way to find out about it. I hope that things don't have to be that way for people. But just like AA says, sometimes you have to reach your bottom.
That's so true.
But the other way is to begin to question. There's a wonderful study that Dove did when they started many years ago now doing these commercials about true beauty and
moms and stuff. Yeah,
and they did it over in Great Britain, and it was a study that they took mothers and daughters, and the mothers were asked what they hated about their bodies, and they said, "Oh, I hate my knees, I hate my nose, I hate my ears, whatever it happens to be." Yeah. But I would never say that to my daughter. I don't ever say that to her. I tell her how beautiful she is, how she's achieved so much, and blah, blah, blah. Well, at the same time, they were asking the daughters to write what they didn't like about their bodies. And, maybe it's already evident.
It was a mirror.
But when the daughters read to their mothers, it was significantly the same.
And moms are probably in tears. And
you don't have to say it for it to be absorbed by your child. And I'm sure that's true for men. I know it's true for men. So I think you have to become aware if you want to be an aware human being, and some people don't. So the answer is to say, let me question why I do what I do. What rules am I following that I don't? Do I really want? Do I need to follow this rule? People have said to me, your parents would be so proud of you for writing this book. And I look at them and then say, my dad would be proud, but my mother is turning over in her grave. Because one of the things I absorbed from her is you don't share your
truth, your vulnerabilities. Yeah.
No. And so anyway, I think that was I aware of that growing up? That I had that, I was living by that rule? No. Did it affect my life? Yes. Was it one of the reasons I developed panic disorder? Yes. So not blaming her, but just acknowledging that impact on me. So I think that when you want to be aware, and that's a choice, when you want to be aware, then questioning yourself, asking yourself, why do I do what I do? And why do I believe what I believe? And then finding answers to that.
So, before the breakdowns.
Yeah, but it would be nice.
Yeah. Are you a parent?
Yes.
What is a few things that every parent, if they could control this and give this to their kid or their kids growing up, what are a few things that they could give them that would set them up for the potential best life they could have?
You're obviously not a parent, are you?
Not yet. I got to research from wise people. Like if you could wave
I
a
knew the answer to
magic
that
wand
question.
and say like, it's never talking bad. It's, I don't know, modeling something that's positive. Like what are 3 things that parents, if they could give to their kids, they should try to do? Obviously, it's never going to be perfect, but what could they try to instill in their kids? So they have, powerful, thoughtful leaders in their own life.
Sure. I can't remember the name of the man right now, but he spoke at a graduation in an uppity up school. I can't remember what it was. One of the best and brightest. And he said the thing he regretted most in his life was not being kind. And I think that if you're kind to yourself and you're kind to other people, that if you instill a sense of kindness in your children, that is a huge factor. They'll be able to make friends.
Yeah.
So I always want to throw a pillow at the television when somebody tragically, that's not when I want to throw a pillow, but when a teenager or a young person dies by suicide or struggles, they trot out the usual signs of depression. And one, of course, in my own research, that's not the only thing, but that's not what's really important. What they don't say, they say what to look for in your child. What they don't say is what to look for in yourself.
The parents? Or?
The parents. Meaning, are you talking about, sometimes I get really sad. Sometimes I get so angry I don't know what to do with it. Sometimes I'm haunted by something in the past. Sometimes it's hard to forgive myself. How vulnerable are you being with your children? Where you're modeling. We talked about that absorption stuff. Where you're modeling. It's okay to talk about it. I'm not going to say what it was, but my son made a mistake in college, and he called me. He knew I had made similar mistakes. And he called me. And at first I had the mom response, which was, and then he goes, Mom, I called you because you've talked about it. And I went, oh, yeah. And so I was able to get out of that mom response and just be there for him because he was calling me because he could be vulnerable. And I loved that moment. I mean, I'm sure there are others that are not quite that great. But anyway, so I would ask parents to, if you want your child to talk to you about being depressed, then open up to them about not some of your secrets necessarily, but about who you are and how you've learned to function and how you've learned to handle disappointment. Maybe you were bullied and how you learned to handle that. Just talk to them about real stuff, not what they made on some test and not, this stuff that we can get really bogged down by.
Yeah. That's a question I ask a lot of people towards the end. It's called the 3 truths.
Okay.
So I'm curious your thoughts.
I should have listened to more podcasts.
So I want you to imagine it's your last day on earth many years from now. Okay. You get to live as long as you want to live, and you get to achieve everything you want. Your book reaches millions of people. You're helping more people. You're doing your clinical work. You're doing whatever you want.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, you've got to take everything you've created with you when you leave this world, right? So you've got to take
1 million books. I have to take 1 million
books.
books.
All your work with you. Okay. All your written work, all your audio, podcast, everything you've ever done. It's got to go with you to the next world, wherever you go. But you get to leave behind a message, 3 things that you know to be true from your whole life experience that you would share with everyone. And this is all we have to remember you by, are these 3 lessons that you would share with people, or 3 truths, what I like to call them. What would you say are your 3 truths?
I would say first that it's important to find what is bigger than you, that in your own life that you feel gives your life purpose. And that could be a lot of things. Everything from the sublime to the ridiculous, but it just that gives you a sense of something bigger than you.
Yeah.
I would say that there is no shame in struggle. And in fact, if you don't struggle, that you learn more from struggling than you do, or even failing, than you do from success. And I only get 3. Huh? I would say that having laughter and, again, a sense of connection with people is so, because having laughter and a sense of connection with people is so important, because that is how you know that whether or not all the evidence of your existence is gone, that the people who love you and who you've loved, more importantly, will always have that in their hearts and their minds. It's not your accomplishment. You know, what is it that Maya Angelou said? It's how you treat people that they'll remember, not what you do.
People won't remember what you said or did. They'll remember the way you made them feel.
Exactly. And so I'm not as eloquent as Maya Angelou, but that is what I would say, that kind of internalization of your gifts to others is what's so meaningful about life. Because, you know, no matter what your spiritual beliefs, and that means that those things, but accomplishment,
Yeah. I love those. Those are great truths. Your podcast has been really helpful for a lot of people, including me. It's called SelfWork, and people can go listen to that right now. And this book is going to help a lot of people. Perfectly Hidden Depression, How to Break Free from the Perfectionism That Masks Your Depression. Who's this book for? And what's the main thing they'll get out of this?
It offers, well, let me answer the first question first. The book is for people who, when they see the term perfectly hidden depression, something in their gut goes, oh, you mean I need to listen to that? I've tried hard not to listen to it. I have discounted it. I've denied it. But when the lights are off and everybody's asleep but me, I know something's wrong. It could also help people that are very aware of what they're doing, something called high-functioning depression or smiling depression. And that's fine. And there are strategies for them as well. But really the people that I want to reach are those people that are walking around just knowing that their lives are emptier and lonelier than they want, but they can't let anybody know that. That I used the term with you before the interview, they have stayed silent about secrets that they have kept or shame they have felt or confusion or whatever, because they must look so successful.
Yeah.
That's who it's for. How does it help?
That was probably 20 years of my life.
I have none of this actually myself. Yeah, I've been very perfectionistic in my life.
Yeah.
How it's going to happen, you know, when New Harbinger, who published the book, they were looking at accepting the book, and they said, well, this is great, but right now this book only describes this syndrome. It doesn't, there's no treatment. And so they said, in 2 weeks, we'd like you to come up with a treatment. And I just went, what? In 2 weeks? But what I did is I sat down and I thought, okay, what are the steps that I do with really everybody? We've mentioned some of them, or we've inferred some of them. And those steps are, and it's going to sound kind of hokey because I had to come up with something very popular, the 5 C's of healing, because woohoo, you know. Consciousness, commitment, confrontation, connection, and change. And what I mean by those is you have to become aware of the problem before you can do anything about it. That's consciousness and mindfulness and all the stuff we've been talking about. Commitment means that you have to look at the hurdles to the actual change itself. Or with a perfectionist, your perfectionism can get in the way because you have a relapse and all of a sudden you go, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. This doesn't make me feel good. So there are all kinds of specific hurdles for perfectionists, but there's hurdles for everybody. The confrontation is something that's a very CBT or cognitive behavioral kind of approach, which is more about, again, we sort of mentioned it, is the rules that you're following and which ones are helpful to you and which ones are hurtful to you. And there's a specific kind of guidelines. There are like 60 exercises in the book. It's more of a workbook, actually. The fourth one is tough. The fourth one is connection with these emotions that you have been afraid to connect with. And since it's a self-help book, I mean, I say all over it, if this gets too hard, go to therapy. You find a therapist. But the technique that I use, or I suggest them using, is what's called a trauma timeline. Whereas you really look back at all your life and you think, okay, what were the good things that happened to me when I was 2 or 12 or 22? And what were the difficult things, the painful things, or the secrets I've kept?
The moments.
The moments. And their impact on you. And so you can begin to see this pattern that starts evolving.
That's cool.
You can do that. So the last one is change. And I'm a huge believer after doing this I saw my first patient in 1988 in graduate school. It's a long time. Insight is wonderful. Insight gives you context. You can look at those patterns and go, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. That's why I always have troubles with it could be anything, with selfishness, because I was never concerned. My parents never did anything for me that was all about me. So I become kind of a selfish person because I'm going to get mine before anybody gets theirs. So you can look at this pattern and see it, but where you get hope is from behavior change. So the change chapter is all about how you begin actually making changes in your behavior. We already talked about changes in your thinking. So you do things like learn how to play. You do things like how to find your value in something other than accomplishment. You find things that perfectionists have a very difficult time just actually feeling their emotions. And so you find a piece of music that helps you do that, and you sit and listen to that music, whatever. Because where you get your hope is from changing your behavior. And the strategies itself and the stages are applicable to anything, but I've just made them specific for perfectionists.
I love it.
Thank you.
Make sure you guys get the book, Perfectly Hidden Depression. I think your podcast is great. I don't listen to many of them, many podcasts out there, but I like yours, SelfWork. I want to acknowledge you for doing this work, because not many people talk about this stuff. The depression linked to being perfectionism. And I think that's something that a lot of people feel like they need to live up to, this perfectionist point of view with social media and all the comparison that's out there, and seeing their friends have this perfect life and them feeling like they have to have a perfect life. But that links to a lot of anxiety, stress, overwhelm, depression, and things like that. So I think this is a powerful book for a lot of people. So I want to acknowledge you for writing this, for doing the work, and for allowing you to share all your vulnerabilities as a therapist over the years, so you can help other people with your shame too.
Sure, there are plenty of stories about me in that book. If I can't talk about it, then I can't expect other people.
Exactly. So we can find you on the podcast, the book. Where else can we find you online?
drmargaretrutherford.com. It has a very creative name.
Dr. Margaret
It's my website.
Okay.
And the book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Indie Books and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Final question is, what's your definition of greatness?
First thought, putting my head on my pillow at night and thinking I did something today that has made me grow, has helped me grow as a person. And that's been a great day. Maybe I learned how to cry about something I haven't ever cried about. Maybe I helped a friend. Maybe I wrote a post that did well. Maybe I just simply remembered that it was the anniversary of one of my friends' spouses' deaths. And I called them. When I put my head on my pillow and kind of say, all right, I feel like I've grown today, or I've helped someone else grow. That to me is a great day, and that to me is greatness.
Dr. Margaret, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
so
it.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here to listen in to these guest hosts. I'm doing well and I'm looking forward to being back with you. Enjoy the rest of 2022. And as always, thank you for being here. Take very good care of yourself, your home, your family, and those you love. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.